Hello, my beautiful friends. It's me, Kirsten, and this is the It's Giving Mystical podcast, and this is your weekly podcast for the week ahead of October 18th, 2024. We just had this incredibly activating, incredibly churning up of the world Aries full moon this past week. We have our full moon circle tonight at the Salt House. It was a very complicated week for a lot of people. The Knight of Wands was coming in as a reminder of you and what you want, people telling you what they want, also people kicking up trouble, like kicking up passion, kicking up trouble, not really knowing how to handle the amount of energy or emotion that was moving through them, maybe not even knowing how to handle their own desires, right? It sounds so simple. Like own what you need, own what you desire. The lived experience of that is so complicated for so many people. And I'm not like, and not me, because I'm sure for me too. Like none of us get out of here alive, right? I don't care how much time you spend thinking about this or working on this or, I don't know, journaling, accessing your inner wisdom, facing your shadows, healing your trauma, working on your nervous system, embodying your truth, like yada, yada, yada. Of course, it's beautiful. This is my life's work. I love all of it. And one of the great realizations, one of the great things that can settle into our bodies and our shoulders is sometimes all of that effort to get it right becomes another way of holding ourselves to this impossible standard. And so whatever happened this past week, forgive yourself, forgive others if you can, and know that even with our best intentions, because as I've said to you before, it all does come from a positive intention. People do the craziest, shittiest, wildest things trying to get something they need. And that's why this idea of accountability, integrity, and coming back to what you need, taking ownership for it, being brave enough to say it to yourself, and then eventually being brave enough to say it to the world is so important. It creates a level of peace and clarity and stability in your field that is such a gift, especially in this world right now. You can spend a lot of time looking out and being like, well, everything else is a mess, like go fuck it. But I'm telling you that your work to stay with yourself, with an open heart, with compassion, with patience, it does affect the world. Like it does feed out into the field this larger sense of we're going to be okay, this larger sense of it's okay for things to be uncomfortable, this larger sense of there is no right way to do this. Like we really are doing the best we can. Some of us a little more consciously than others, but the truth is to be human is to be human, and to be human is to want and need and be confused and try again and get stuck and get unstuck. And so I say all that because the Knight of Wands was incredibly activating energy. The Aries full moon was incredibly activating for people. And the Aries energy comes draws to attention our warrior, draws to attention the part of us that's fighting for something. And when it's Aries energy, it's fighting for I am. It's fighting for me. And so that gets triggered, that gets activated, and it can feel really hot. And if it's not something you're comfortable owning, if it's not a space you sat in and made peace with, really metabolized, it can kind of shoot off like little fireworks of trouble. Like it can kind of shoot off in this way that is a little bit destructive. Aries energy, right, in its most beautiful form is clear and strong and focused and, like we said last week, infatigable. Still don't know if that's a word, but infatigable, meaning like when you know what you want, there's no greater force and strength on earth. It's that Mars energy. It's so beautiful and powerful and yet enlivening. And when that's not well held in the body, when that's not well held in the field, that can get destructive very quickly. So again, what I will say about the Knight of Wands, the blessing and the curse of the Knight of Wands, is that it comes and goes quickly. And so the things that maybe were really insane this past week, just know that they're not here with there's not a sustained burn to them. Your work, especially, I'm going to call this out, especially if you face things this past week that feel like I've been here before, that feel like, wait, this echoes like a conversation I've already had, or an experience or an encounter I've already had, or a project I've already worked on. I will say there is this very strong deja vu in the space right now, and the difference is you. It's interesting to watch the deja vu, the circumstances circle and cycle, and the difference is you. The difference is how you attend to it. The difference is how you attend to yourself. The difference is how you are approaching these things from a completely new perspective. You are different than you were. And so noticing the deja vu, the cycles repeating themselves, and honoring the fact that you're not handling things the way you used to, and also letting them have their last gasp, like letting those old kind of cycles finish and fall away. And the beauty of the Aries full moon is it's like, oh, actually, I remember what I'm fighting for. I remember what I'm doing. I remember what I desire. I remember where I'm going. And if you're not on board with me, if you're not feeling that, nurturing that, supporting that, guiding that, then there's no room for you here. And I mean you as in other people, as in work, as in projects, as in habits, patterns, reactivities. What doesn't belong with you in this new cycle, this new way of being with the things you're fighting for, the life you're fighting for, the world you're fighting for. So I hope that you found exuberance and optimism and excitement in this past week. And I hope that if things were more activating or more like conflict aware, conflict based, that you realize that that can exist. You're not the same and you can let it go. And so that's where it comes: forgiveness for ourselves, forgiveness for others. And remembering, when you know what you're doing, like when you know what you're fighting for and you know what you're working to create in your life, and you speak truly about that, like you are who you say you are, your word is what you say, and you are like owning that, nothing can fuck with you. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it's like there's something that happens that the world colludes to meet you in this new place where there is clarity and strength and power. And that's a beautiful thing, especially when it's Knight of Wands. Like, that's a beautiful thing to say, like, aha, I remember what I'm fighting for. I remember what I want, and I am here for it. I am on my own team. I am fighting for the life that I want, that I desire, that I need. And so I slide us into this next week where the energy is the Four of Wands, which is very different, but still speaks to us about our passion, our desire, our drive, our heat, our vitality. Why are you here? And what are you doing with this one precious, precious life? And the Four of Wands is a beautiful energy. We call it the marriage card. And the reason it's considered the card indicating marriage is because it creates stability around our passion. So it creates containership around our vitality, our creativity, our sexuality. So when the Four of Wands shows up, it says you're taking your desires seriously. You're willing to speak them to the world. You're willing to speak them outside of yourself. And you're willing to actually create structures, containers, habits that support the best of you, that support the most empowered version of you. So it's a really beautiful energy. The image is, it looks like, actually reminds me of like a hookah, like a covered, did I say that right? Yeah, the chuppah. Sorry, not the hookah. That's a pipe. The chuppah. Jewish wedding ceremony. Oh my God, Lord help me, Kirsten. And it's like the covered altar, the covered sacred space where the wedding ceremony takes place. That's what it looks like. It's 4 wands planted into the earth with this beautiful harvest over it. It also really reminds me of the Jewish tradition of the Sukkot, which again, I hope I'm saying that right. I had an Israeli neighbor who kept a kosher household, and I grew up around a lot of Jewish people, and I had, my stepfathers were both Jewish, my brother is Jewish. So I knew a lot about traditions, but I had never come across Sukkot before. And my neighbor used to build this structure in her backyard during the fall season, and it was this beautiful tent they would build, and they would have their meals under it, and they would celebrate under it. And I don't know a lot about the holiday, but I'm very clear on the fact that there was this special kind of temple, harvest temple built in the outdoors that became this sacred place. That's very much pictured on this card. I don't always think of that when I see this card, but I really saw it today. I also really felt the importance of nature, the importance of being out in the world, the importance this week of stepping outside of your home, your buildings, your work, enclosed spaces, and being out in the world. And it could be because where I am right now, the seasons are changing and the leaves are just, I love fall, but sometimes it just takes your breath away. The way the light pushes through the leaves, it's like stained glass. It's so beautiful. And so I've been really feeling that, just the pleasure in that, how lucky it is to kind of view that and take that in. And when I sat with the card this morning, it really felt like this strong invitation to be outside and to feel like your cheeks get rosy, to kind of push yourself out in the world, to feel that sense of a little bit of a little bit of effort in your body, in your time in nature. So it didn't feel like just going out into nature and sitting quietly. It felt like going out into nature and pushing yourself a little bit, maybe stepping outside when it's a little colder than you'd prefer, or running a little harder than you might prefer, or just doing something, or maybe doing a little more extra gardening, taking a couple extra steps, whatever the challenge is for you. There was something about pushing yourself to really feel your own vitality, to feel the blood pumping in your body and rushing to your cheeks. I can't get that image out of my mind, so I don't know what that means for for someone or for me or for the week ahead, but this sense of like that flush in your cheeks, like when you're skiing and your cheeks get really kind of like warm and cold at the same time, or when you're out in the fall weather and you're, all bundled up but still moving, this kind of like hot, cold, therapy, but in nature. So I don't know what that means, but I offer that to you as something that the card is really calling for, this kind of briskness. The other energy that I really heard was this idea of homecoming. It feels like a homecoming. And maybe that's a homecoming in your own space. Maybe that's a homecoming in your world. Maybe you'll be visiting with people. My oldest daughter, Aslan, who you all know is one of my favorite people in the whole world, is coming home this week. And I pulled it and I felt really selfish because I pulled it and I was like, homecoming, like she's coming back. It's homecoming at the school tonight, at the high school by us. So this idea of homecoming, and it's funny, I have I think they're German. They play soccer. Their son plays soccer with my son. And they said to me, what's homecoming? Like, what is this? Like, why and what? And it's so funny because the other parents were trying to answer and no one really had an answer. And all we could kind of come up with is this idea of like, well, it's like the big home game. It's like everyone comes back to the school and rah, rah. And there's something about this idea of like, we belong here together. And this is something that exists beyond us. It's something about like the legacy of this time and place and supporting each other. There's something really uplifting about that homecoming. And that's also that feeling I keep talking about in your cheeks. It's like that when you go to a football game and it's cold, but you're so excited and warm and in the crowd and you can feel that. All of this energy was really here. And I just want to say very clearly, there's something about being outside this week that would really serve you. And so when you think about these ideas of structures, you can think about, containership structure. You can think about the Sukkot, the altar, the safe space, the sacred space. And there's something about the way that's created outside of man-made structures that's important. So this idea of homecoming, this idea of creating structure around the things you want. I love this idea of the Knight of Wands feeding into the Four of Wands. Again, that's like really deeply optimistic energy. And I know that many people don't feel that way about the world right now. Like, I'm well aware of the struggles people are having in their lives individually. I'm well aware of the larger cultural conversations happening out in the world. And I don't really step into that for good reason. I will say to you that like my work really centers on self-accountability, like being who you need to be to bring more peace to your own field, to your family, to your community, and to the world. Like, I really believe it does start with us. That's probably a debate we could have, but like, I really believe that. I believe that when you feel that sacred fire, I heard a writer talking about the other day, like the sacred fire of your soul, and you begin to align to that and live with that type of integrity, your purpose becomes being. And so it will result in actions, it will result in art and work and effort out in the world, but it naturally unfolds. And I've talked about Cass Phelps before, the way he talks about your gift process. It's the same thing. There's something about truly owning who you are and aligning yourself into that clarity of sight and action that reveals to you what's next and reveals to you these kind of important movements that create much more impact than you might give yourself credit for. Again, I'm getting off track, but this idea of the huppah, this idea of the sacred space, this idea of the four directions in shamanism, when we open sacred space, right? We activate, we call on the four winds, we call on the four directions. We also call on the energy of the earth and we call on the energy of the universe. We create a containership that calls on all of our allies and our ancestors and our guides and the forces, the archetypes of nature that live in the world. We call on all of that and we create this beautiful space where such powerful work can happen. So it's something about this binding of space, and it's something about this binding of space being not metaphorical per se, but outside of your home. Like, I don't know why that keeps coming through, and outside of like a building. It feels like you need to go outside and you need to have this homecoming. And I'm not sure exactly where that's going. I trust that you know where to take that message, but it feels like you need to feel the wind on your face. You need to feel yourself connected to nature. You need to feel yourself pushing. There needs to be some sense of like your physical vitality coming online in a way that it hasn't before. And then creating sacred space. And this idea of the Knight of Wands into the Four of Wands, as I've just interrupted myself saying, is this idea of like, oh, I see now what I'm here to do. I have clarity of vision. I know what lives in me as an unstoppable desire, as something that must be fed and lived and experienced. And then the Four of Wands is like, I not only feel that and know that and want that, but we talked last week about how the Knight of Wands cannot create stability on his own. The Four of Wands is the stabilizing of wand energy. And going back to what I said before I started saying hookah and huppah, the idea that we say, we call this the marriage card, is because the passion, the excitement that I want this other person, this union is calling to me. when we bring that into the place of speaking it to our communities, like making those vows public, taking this desire and creating a space around it that says, this is where our union will live. So yes, marriage is an example of that, but think about that idea. This is some place I want to be. This is something I want to experience. This is something I want to connect to. This is a union that I seek, an experience I seek. And I am going to create structure and speak aloud to my community that this matters to me. And whatever that looks like for you. Your community could be one other person. It could be on the Instagram. It could be anything. What do we want to say about who we are and what we are going to make sacred and central in our lives right now? So this trajectory from the Knight of Wands to the Four of Wands is a beautiful indication that whatever kind of got activated or clarified or confronted for you last week that helps you say, no, this is what I want. Bringing it into the Four of Wands this week is not only is this what I want, but this is what I'm going to work for. This is what I'm going to work for, celebrate, and cultivate in my life. This is what I'm going to build as a space for me to fully achieve and nurture. It's like we talked about that spark of fire and how it has to get fed. This is like I'm going to create this circle of stones within which the fire can live, and I'm going to make sure I have all the wood I need, and I'm going to make sure that the rain can't take it down, and I'm going to make sure that there's comfortable seating here. Like it's taking this analogy of the spark, the flame, the excitement, and it's creating structure around it so that that flame can endure. Cool. There's something about companionship definitely here, and that companionship can take so many different forms, but there's something about that companionship, that idea of someone that you're willing to kind of fight for and exert for and enjoy. And the last thing I'll say about this is it's a reminder to celebrate when you have the chance to celebrate. Life is hard. The world is a little fucking crazy right now. Not that it's ever not a little crazy, but right now it feels particularly volatile. And so when you can find moments of celebration, when you can see the sunlight through the leaves, when you can feel your daughter coming home from college, when you can take a walk with a friend, when you can feel the wind rushing through the trees, enjoy it. Don't steal that from yourself. And if you had a realization about something you want, and now you have the means to make stability, containership around that, fucking ride that all the way to the bank. What a blessing. What a blessing. And so I just want to really encourage you to see this next moment in your life as an opportunity to build stability around something you know matters to you, to build stability around something that you know is aligned with that soul fire, that sacred fire that lives in your heart, that wants to create something very specific for your life, for your time here. Okay, cool kids, me, you, and the cool kids. Four of Wands, it's a beautiful energy. It's one of the cards where it's actually really hard to feel a negative around this card. What I'll say is that sometimes if I had to read the challenge of this card, it would be that something about the structure making you feel suffocated. And that's why I keep saying, like, this is really about you doing something in the fresh air. I don't know why that matters. If you are feeling suffocated, the invitation is to rethink the structures, rethink the containership, connect back with the thing that you want, and then look around and say, is this life supporting? Is the way I'm moving supporting this thing that I know I'm willing to fight for, that I'm here to fight for? And if you feel suffocated, know that the container can always change shape. That's an invitation to a conversation around what needs to shift so that you can be more fully aligned with your truth, with your desire, and with the work that you're here to do. Mostly this card feels really good, really feels like this homecoming, and I can feel that, for a few of my clients, and for myself is the actuality of that, but then metaphorically what it means to really be coming home to a stronger, more stable, more full sense of yourself than maybe you've experienced ever or in a while or, whatever. Definitely in the last year. Okay, sending so much love. Sending you the ability to have safe space and wishing you time in nature where you can really feel that you, my friend, are alive. You, my friend, are alive, and your heart is pumping, and there's wind to feel against your skin, and there's sunlight and moonlight to look at and wonder at, and there are people to hug and kiss and sit next to and share a meal with. This is a blessed life. Chaotic, yeah, scary, sure, but blessed 100%. I hope you can feel that this week. All right, my friends, check you later. Cool kids. Bye.